Hey guys, welcome. I'm Vulture Culture, and tonight we're going to be checking out Revenant M1, which is my new sample pack, sampled directly from the Korg M1 from 1988. What makes it special as compared to software recreations of the M1 is you get the actual sound of the digital to analog converters in these vintage digital pad sounds, as opposed to the software, which is perfectly clean, so you don't really get that texture. Tonight, the roadmap is going to be showing you guys what you get in the product, and kind of like an owner's manual, but also the biggest thing is just going to be checking out all 30 of the different patches and some creative ways that you guys could use it. So let's go ahead and cover that real quick, actually. So I'm going to just pull this over here, and you can see when you open up the zip file for Revenant M1 Vintage Digital Pads, you'll get two folders. One of them is the WAV files, and it's got all of the separate patches, so they're all sampled every third note for over 600 samples, right? And so if we wanted to look at the Pewdie sound that was used by Gary Newman a lot, you can see we have all of the different notes here up to keyboard, and you could use these in any sampler. So whether it's hardware or software, because it's all labeled out, you can load it right in and make your own stuff. So that's a really cool way if you've got a cool hardware synth that loads samples or something like that. For this stream, I'm going to use my favorite way to interact with it, which is the sound fonts. The sound font, for some reason I've got these files here. I don't know if those will be in the final product. Hopefully not. But the sound fonts here are super great because you can just load them into almost every sampler loads SF2 files, and that's what I've done here. And this is Tal sampler. You could use literally every sampler out there. I think there's a free one called Sforzando or something like that. You guys could just Google SF2 free sampler, and I'm sure it'll pull it up. I believe it works with Contact. If not, you can load the individual files in. That'll definitely work with Contact. I know SFZ works with Contact. I don't remember otherwise. I don't have a full version of Contact, so I couldn't test it. I don't want to give Native Instruments my money. But this is a really great, reasonably priced sampler from the homies over at Tal. I was super impressed by Tal Fa. And I had actually already bought this because it's wonderful. And you can use this as a synthesizer. As you can see, we've got 4 layers like a D50, 2 envelopes plus a third one for whatever else you want to send it to, 3 LFOs, we've got an equalizer, delay, and reverb, all sorts of cool stuff. But for this case, it's actually very simple just to click here and go to import SF2, and then I've already picked up the folder, right? So Vintage Digital Pad sound fonts, and Iceman, welcome to the stream. I use Sample Robot, the most recent version of that. There's probably other ways to do it. So we're going to check out all of these sounds, right? And we're actually I'm going to do them in reverse order because it happens to be the first sound you'd hear on a Korg M1 is the last sound on this list, Universe. We'll just try to go backwards. So you just select it, okay, import, and what it will do when you first, now this is Tal sampler specific, but because this sample has, the sound font has 2 channels, left and right, you just have to, it'll default to looking like this, so you just want to pan them left and right like that. And then I like adding a little bit of attack because the nature of creating these samples was they had to hit a certain threshold before Sample Robot, you know, was like, okay, this is the start. So a little attack helps and a lot of release helps to get there. But aside from that, I haven't done anything. So all I've done is routed this to my free reverb plugin, Inktomi, just to help with the ambientness of it, but you don't really need it. So let's go ahead and check out what the Universe patch sounds like. It should be familiar to some of you. So it's very authentic right there. Matrix 12, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Oral Escape, welcome to the stream. How are you? Hopefully, yes, there should, SF2 should work on it. It's a very old technology. So Universe is great and a great example of the sort of thing I'm trying to go for with this sample pack, which is, again, it's $10, links in the description. It's a great way to help the channel out too. If you support what I'm doing here, to keep the lights on here and so that I can afford to take off work on Wednesdays, $10 sample pack, you get something out of it and it helps support the channel. So anybody who's already bought it, I know a lot of you have, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Omnisphere cannot, but I actually do want to show you guys how you can use Omnisphere with this pack as well. And the good thing about these particular sounds is when you, okay, so I'm going to play like middle C-ish. In the Korg M1, there's only one sample that's stretched across the key bed. So when I play an octave down, you'll hear those little sounds are playing half as fast. Right? If I play really low, you get these just slow. How creepy is that? Bliskin, welcome to the stream. I wish I still had my Ensoniq Mirage, but those of you guys who are members of the channel know that I got a new sampler this week. And I also got the cable required to hook it up to a very special synthesizer. So that's going to be incoming. Those of you who are members of the channel already know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so what the advantage of that is, Nick, is that you don't really gain a lot actually by multi-sampling, because inside the key bed, it's not multi-sampled. It's just one sample stretched across. So we could actually load the Universe patch into Omnisphere because it'll allow you to load one file. And these are stereo 24-bit files, so really good quality. And that'll be a lot of fun. I've thought about doing a whole Omnisphere pack based off of this type of thing, but you know, for now we're talking about this. So yeah, very famous sound. So just awesome, right? You've got the whole Korg collection, and ModWave, OP6, and WaveState is pretty awesome. I really do think so. And again, this isn't really intended to be a replacement for the M1 VST. These are just a lot of patches in this, though, I do want to say, are not in the M1 VST. So as we get going, you'll see that we have more of that. And so I think this is one that's not in the M1 VST, called Under 2. And so I'll save all the same stuff, so my release and all that's the same. If anyone's ever played the game Riven, old, you know, it's the sequel to Myst, right? This one reminds me of that, the way it kind of steps through these whole tone harmonics. Very creepy. Chris, welcome to the stream. How's it going? There's definitely some echoes of organ for sure. And in fact, there is a sample called Magic Organ in the M1 that is very good, actually. One of my favorite organ sounds. So yeah, we can... Karmic asks, what would be today's heir to the M1 throne? I would throw that up to the chat. What do you guys think is the heir to the M1 today? It's interesting because, Korg doesn't exactly have the M1 in their lineup, right? It's more like the way they say it, it's basically they have the DS8, the DW8000, and the Wave Station are recreated in their digital lineup. Ambient Machine, welcome. How's it going, my friend? So yeah, Under 2 is really cool, and really glinty sort of stuff. So when you play it low, it's very creepy, but if we, jump up, it's really kind of it's quite nice. And of course we got a filter with resonance and everything in here, so we could actually do that sort of thing in Tal Sampler, but just wanted to highlight you can do that. But I'm not, my goal here is to show off all the sounds, so I guess we should keep going, right? So top, this is one of everybody's favorite sounds. This is insane to me. I mean, I guess it is digital, but it just sounds so huge that I don't even care. It's so dope. Art Travels for Life, welcome to the stream. Yeah, this is one of my favorites. It's just a incredible sound here. I can turn it up a little bit. The way it opens up, and of course I've got a lot of attack. If you want it to be a little bit faster, you can... To me, it's giving Luftrum, it's giving Arc Sun, it's giving that sort of huge cyberpunk. It's just incredible. The sounds that are in the Korg M1 natively, and what you're going to find, a lot of the sounds in the Korg M1 VST are very static, dry, virtual analog. They're just not always my favorite, but this patch in particular, whoever programmed it is a god. So moving right along, we're going to check out Tekka and see what we have here. Turn the volume down a bit just so I don't clip. So just a really great kind of soundtrack adjacent. A little bit of clipping in there again, so I should probably turn the volume down just a touch. Yeah, just very, very cool. And that was one of the goals with this pack, is I actually sampled a lot of M1 patches, but I wanted to keep it to my favorites for this, so that, not only is this pack an accurate recreation of the sounds from the Korg M1, and a lot of the sounds that are rare and hard to find, you're not going to find in the VST, like I said. There's also an element of curation, right? These are sounds that I think are gorgeous and unique, and that when I found them, I was like, whoa, this is, a really beautiful sound that I want to have. not going to have an M1 forever because I've got too many synthesizers, so I've got to let it go, right? But I have this tool, and that's basically what I do whenever I make a product, is I'm really just making a tool I wish existed. And I make it so, and then I share it with you guys. And I try to keep the price as low as possible. $10 I think is super reasonable, because I want to get these vintage synth sounds into the hands of regular people like you and me. So yes, I think it's a really great one. So hopefully I convinced somebody tonight to buy this thing. We've got two separate sweep sounds. I believe one of them is in the M1 and one of them's not. So let's go ahead and see what we have here. Right. This one's interesting because it's got this sort of... I'm happy to be a tool. You're happy exists. By the way, can I get a cheers, guys? I'm drinking this Sam Adams, Just the Haze. But I appreciate everybody out there who makes this stream fucking amazing every Wednesday. And if you're new here, welcome. Please subscribe just so that you'll know when I'm going live and when I post a new video. Hit the bell, yada yada. You guys are tired of hearing that from fucking YouTubers. So cheers to everybody out there. Can I get some scum cheers in the chat? Thank you so much, Ambient Machine. I really appreciate it. Nathaniel, thank you so much. Welcome to the stream. Let's just keep going here. So then sweep one. Very different sound, if I recall correctly. So this has that almost PVG sort of character to it. Sefsa, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Let me know how to pronounce it. Hello, I've watched your videos for Omnisphere 2. These sounds are great. Will the sounds work with the M1 software? Unfortunately not. These are just raw samples. However, and sound fonts. You can use the samples in Omnisphere, and I do intend to show you guys that later on. Nenya Business, welcome to the stream. How's it going, you filthy scum? Ed from Earth, welcome. How's it going? Also filthy scum. Yeah, JD800 where it's a little overbright. I don't know. Itching to think. Welcome, welcome. And we got Bob Castro. How you guys doing? I don't know. I'd be curious in particular, Nick. What do you think of this sound? Like, is this something you would use, or is it too brittle and digital sounding, or is that what's good about it? This is one that I was... Like, this was one I considered not throwing in there because I was like, some people are going to be like, it's just too not analog for a pad. You know what I mean? Like, too bright. But I kind of like those sounds that remind me of those, you know, hybrid synths, like the microwave or the, of course, the PVG, right? I was just curious what you guys would say. Shoe's a really interesting one, as it reminds me very much of the Icefields preset, which is the greatest preset of all time for this type of sound that came out on the Korg MS-2000, which would have been, what, 12 years later or something like that. So this one's cool. We could apply some attack here. Even more if we want to kind of stop it from being too... Turn it more from like a poly sound into a pad. Vince, welcome to the stream. How's it going? By the way, guys, if 10 bucks is too much, you could also become a member of the channel for 5 bucks and get this half off, but you get a lot of other stuff free. So I guess it ends up being the same, but you guys know what's up. Rinso's a really cool one. They're all really cool. I'm probably going to say that about every patch. I apologize, but that's just... very pretty, isn't it? So turning the attack down, you actually get a pretty... Mighty Pinto, welcome. How's it going, my friend? Yeah, there's some really great ones in here. Art to the flute pad. I need more flute pads in my life moving forward. Waveform Multimedia, welcome to the stream. No, we are listening. Well, yes and no. So there is some baked in reverb. But of course, we could turn the release all the way down. You could hear the reverb from my free reverb plugin Inktomi. I just have it on just because these are all pads, so they should kind of sound ambient, but with the release all the way down. So now you're hearing Inktomi, right? Which is very dark and kind of watery, right? But these patches do sound best using long release. Yes, Wave Sequencer did some incredible sound design with Hyperion. Okay, so just moving right along, because we do have a lot just to cover all of the patches, which I will do. I swear to God, I will do it in this. That way, if anybody's looking at buying this, they can come to this video, and it's kind of like your one-stop shop for what the hell's up. I really like this one. I think it is a decent, not analog patch. Yeah, a great shimmer verb would be pretty good on some of these too. I thought it would be cheating to use like something like a shimmer reverb on these just because it would sound amazing, but I decided just to use my free reverb. That way it's like more fair. I don't know if I'm wild for thinking that way. Todd Bradshaw, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Yeah, I like thin digital pads too, Nick. I like it where I hear the, I like the limitations in the grit and the glassiness from the vintage digital stuff. And so you don't really get that on this one. And again, we could add some attack and change it from being more of a poly thing. Why don't we add even some more, you know? It almost becomes this beautiful cello orchestral swell type thing. So yeah, it's crazy how that could just something as simple, because there's so much movement, hopefully in almost all of these patches, right? You could get it to do that thing, but you also could really morph it by something as simple as the attack of the sound. So what were you listening to? Wait, which one was that? Reductant. Okay. I got lost. Prophet 2. So this is another not analog, but I didn't pick a single patch because I thought it sounded like good for the M1. I picked patches that I would use myself, and this is a good example of this. I like baked-in reverb on something like this. Okay, there is a rationale, and I thought about this. I'm glad you brought this up, because the thing about baked-in reverb is on a vintage digital synth, in particular, which is a narrow category, the reverbs on their own are not great. they're very dark and noisy and ringy. Same thing with the D50, right? On its own, when I first started programming with the D50, I was like, these reverbs are terrible. And yet I associate the D50 with these big, spacious, whatever. So how is that possible? Well, one thing is, when you hear it integrated with the sound of the synthesizer, so that is not after the release, but just like while your fingers are on the keys, it kind of adds to the grainy. There's something about the fact that it's actually low fidelity that adds this layer of grit. It's almost like listening to the sound back on vinyl where there's some crackle and noise, and it's just not, but it makes it wider and darker sounding, which is a more dimension, for lack of, I'm spitting a lot of fucking synth snob words, so please blast my ass in the chat, but there really is something where it makes it feel a little bigger. However, when you play a sound and then you hear just the tail of the reverb, it's that nasty metallic ringing thing that I don't love so much. So the best case scenario for me is to capture the character of that vintage digital reverb in the sound, but let the tails be handled by a nicer, more modulated chorus like the one you would get in my plugin Inktomi. So enough of a ramble there. I actually don't know what sound paint is because I'm very silly. So Sefshaw, okay, got it. So to me, this sound is not a, it doesn't sound analog to me, but I don't mind. So with a little less release, let's see. It's not trying to be analog. I mean, maybe the designer was trying to make it be analog, but to me, that reminds me a lot of those vintage digital textures you get from the 90s more. Yeah. So let's jump right on ahead here. And so that was Prophet PPG. So this should be, pretty self-explanatory, right? Motor, welcome. How's it going, my friend? And so you've got some baked-in vibrato too, right? Just a beautiful sound, isn't it? I really like that one too. Moving along, we've got piano. Now this one, I knew everybody who looked at the sample pack and saw that there was a sound called piano was immediately going to skip past it, and that's a shame because this one is totally unique. So you can hear that they used a piano sample as the start of the sound, but really up here, it can... Hey Nikki, how's it going? It's not a typical piano sound whatsoever, right? It's got a real big character, but it's got that honky-tonk chorus thing. Really fades off towards the top. Very dark, yes, I agree. Oral Escape. All right, jumping right along, we got Notoire. Some of these were really interesting named. I thought about changing the names of these, but in respect to the original creators of some of these sounds, even though I have no idea who made a lot of these, man, do some of these sound great. And I just wanted to keep the integrity to that. I didn't feel like it was right for me to change any of the names. Again, I'm beginning to feel that the flute pad category is underappreciated. I need a flute emoji. I know it'll look like a penis. What a beautiful sound, right? And that's what my takeaway from the Korg M1 was, that I just constantly felt like, wow, you know, there were so many kind of cheesy, romplery sounds that I didn't love. But every time I came to like an evolving pad, there was some really cool stuff. So Nimbus is in the original M1, so I'll skip past it pretty quickly. I want to put a couple of the famous M1 sounds in here just so that if someone didn't want to buy the VST, they have the sound. So this was an important one. And so this is another example of how it's like one sample stretched across the whole keyboard. So loading this into something like Omnisphere will actually work out pretty well too, as far as it goes. So let's keep going here. We can jump into Mogy, I should say. Add some attack, right? That's our little trick. It completely changes the sound. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, definitely getting some of that in there. Considering it's coming from a digital synthesizer, it's crazy. And I would just like to emphasize there's zero synthesis going on, right? I'm not using TAL sampler aside from the attack and release just to control these sound fonts. So everything is just coming directly from the samples. And if you buy this and load it into any sample player, it's going to sound exactly the same. Just add a little reverb, right? Lunapad. Another sound that was in the original Korg M1. Edgetone Studios, John, how's it going? Waveform Mountains new record is awesome. It's called Processing. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, it's definitely worth doing. Hopefully I'm saying your name right, John. I feel like I always get it backwards, so I apologize. Great one. And again, I didn't want to clog up the bank with too many patches that were on the original factory presets, but this one's just very good. Thank God, John. I feel like I screwed that up for way too long. So yeah, for everybody who's here now, we're just checking out Revenant M1, which is my new sample pack for vintage digital pads sampled directly from the Korg M1, and a lot of patches that you're not going to find in the VST that required some additional hunting. Most of them are not presets from the original. They were programmed on it by other people. from back in the day. And so this collection, they're all evolving, beautiful sounds, in my opinion, stuff that I would use in my music. Dubstation says, are you trying to match loop points for long sustain, or are there effectively 2 loop points, one baked in the preset and one in your sample? So I'm not 100% sure how the loop points work if you just drop a wave file into a sampler. I think you might have to set it up depending on your sampler. I'm not 100% sure how that works. We'll check out, see how it works. And so like Omnisphere doesn't do any looping, right? So that's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But in the sound fonts, it's all handled inside of the sound font, which is why a sound font for me, if you can use a sampler that uses it, is great. But you have the files, they're there, they're all sampled for at least 10 seconds. So you get the whole capture, or capture the whole sound for sure. Resofactor, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Brian, welcome to the stream. How's it going? Resofactor says, I still love the M1. I don't use it for real sounds. And I agree. I think the Proteus, which came out the next year, does real sounds a lot better. But what it does great are these sort of crazy vintage digital pads. Gives me big X-Files vibes, right? And of course, right now we're just doing one of these sounds at a time, but you can layer them, you can get all crazy with them. So yeah, it's very cool. This is one of my favorites. Just, I love I try to pick all of the most interesting ones. I had to do, I guess I've been in a fluty mood because there's quite a few in here. And I think it's just because this was a time where people were making flute patches. I don't fucking know. Faster. I should have definitely have tried the last one too, but you could hear that what a difference it is whether it's a pad or more of a. Good to see you, John. Have a great night, okay? Great. Charles, how's it going? Welcome to the stream. Yeah. So, really beautiful. And then, again, I hate to always be kind of going here, but you can turn it into a pad. Rezo, you're right. It does have a similar sound to the Glass Voices patch used from the D50 on the beginning of Star Trek The Next Gen. That was recently, I think, it might be a trivia question coming up. I can't remember. Gothica. So this one uses another one of those baked-in samples stretched across the whole key bed. Turn the attack all the way down, so. I'm sorry, this is the one that I thought might be. If you've played Riven, this sound. Riven type sound. Gerald, welcome to the stream. How's it going, my friend? So for me, you know, not necessarily a sound that I'm going to use all the time. You know, if you think about it, it's a cool sound, but it's almost more like digital native dance or something where it's like a demo of what the M1 could do. However, with a real slow attack, it could be a kind of a cool layer, especially if you bring in a little dissonance. In some sort of score, because it's got that, you know, Silent Hill mandolin tremolo thing, which is pretty neat. And again, so these aren't even, you know, these are not patches in Tile Sampler. These are just sound fonts, and they'll work in anything. So that's a really cool thing. I actually did a poll on the channel, like what sort of format do you guys want? And almost everybody said just give us the WAV files. But I included the sound fonts as well because I think they're underappreciated, and kind of like to what Dubstation was saying, it takes care of worrying about loop points, and a lot of samplers support it. This one's Glass 3. So again, if you want that real, like, additive synthesizer, FM glassy pad, a lot of high end and a lot of low end at the same time, Glass 3 is great. Don't believe this was in the original. I think there is a glass preset in the original M1, but it's not Glass 3. FV Wave, I think it's similar. No, not at all. What is it? There we go. Let's see if I can play notes. There we go. Definitely has that sort of sound to it, which of course came from a Fairlight. Yes, Rezo Factor. Yeah, if you like sound fonts, Brian, this is a pretty cool thing I've created here. And again, I just did it for myself. I wanted to make a product that I would have my favorite thing, you know, sounds from the M1 with me forever, whether or not I have the hardware. And not all of them, actually, most of them weren't in the VST. So I created this more or less for me, and I'm sharing it with you guys for 10 bucks. Members of the channel get it for free right now. I think I misspoke earlier. But by the time, if you're watching this in the future, it will probably go to a 50% discount, which is still pretty good, 5 bucks. Foggy, here we go. This one has a lot of movement in it. So let's play a nice big Silent Hill chord. Really, Rezo Factor, that's terrible fucking timing. Let's make it, let's drop it down a bit. I think somewhere around here it's going to start giving that, it's going to start giving thought forms. Very cool. For me, to give it more of that Triton sound, I would actually use something like a, let's do that again. But just take some of the low end out. Dekarmic, yeah, Thought Form's one of my favorite YouTube channels. His take, a lot of my synths are from the 80s and the sort of more focused a lot on analog and hybrid synths. His focus is more on romplers from the 90s that give you that sort of dreamy ambient sound that was heard in a lot of the music from that period, whether it's like drum and bass or breaks, that type of stuff. featured a lot of soundtracks and things from video games at the time too. So anyways, that's just an idea that you could use a high pass filter to give that a little bit closer to a Triton type sound. So moving right along here, that was Foggy Flange 2. This is the one I opened the live stream with. One of my favorites. So this one's interesting because the flanging is baked in. So if you play the same preset again and again, you'll hear that kind of sound that isn't so great. You know what I mean? Where it's the same attack every time. However, for some reason, when, you know, even that's usually considered a flaw, if you play like a chord, the way that flanging, which almost sounds like pulse width modulation, the way it interacts. A little loud, but just, yeah. Thank you for becoming a member of the channel. I really appreciate that. And enjoy Revenant M1 for free. And a lot of other stuff as well. Yeah, just a really beautiful... And I guess that's, again, kind of, I hate to be harping on this point. Maybe I'm really tiring everybody by saying this, but we all install VSTs, buy new VSTs, uninstall VSTs, buy new computers, and we don't bother to install VSTs. But if you have these sound fonts, right, just on a folder on your hard disk somewhere, they don't take up that much space, just the sound fonts on their own, I think like 300 megabytes or something. And you'll always be able to load these into something. Something you have will play sound fonts. And that's a super cool way to sort of have like a snapshot of these sounds. If you're ever in need for, whoa, what did I do? In need for some inspiration or something that just kind of takes you into a different direction, that's something this could maybe do. Let's go ahead and see if I can play this. So obviously this one's super cool because of the way we've got this rising second layer. Yes, Sforzando is the one that everybody uses for sound fonts if you just want that on your own. Ars Musico, welcome to the stream. How's it going? So yeah, super fun. And that's the whole goal here, right, guys? It's just to have something that gives you a little bit more inspiration. If one of these sounds inspires you to make a cool piece of music, I'll consider myself that I've done a job well done. This one's really cool and reminds me actually of a sound I made for the D50. Oh, let me turn the attack all the way off and a little less release, actually. It's giving Yamaha SY77 much more than I thought the D50 would be able to do on its own. Glad to hear you're doing well. Hypothesis 13, welcome to the stream. How's it going, my friend? So yeah, really fun sound. And let's go on. Digital 4 is a really cool one. I think this one is in the M1 defaults. And I just want to have at least one E-piano sound, although you'll hear that it's not very Yamaha E-piano, right? It's way, way, way too hyped on the tine, which I love. Oh yeah, I'm not a good player at all. I'm quite bad actually, but I love sounds. Hopefully you guys can overlook that. Cloud9, definitely a M1 patch, and just again, I felt like it had to be here. To me, the Cloud9 patch is the most similar that I can think of to a sort of Fantasia thing. Nick, you have a wonderful night. Thanks for hanging out. It's like they knew they had to have some sort of bell pad thing, but in this case, the string section sort of fades in a little later than it does on Fantasia. You can hear it swoop in. Yeah, so pretty cool. Let's see what else we've got in here. Beauty. So this is the sound that Gary Newman abused the shit out of. Everybody associates him with the Polymoog, but really, if you go by albums, he used this sound much, much more. Yeah, definitely was to save some money on Rhodes. Wolfgang, welcome to the stream. Like FM E-piano, yeah, it's much more of that than like a real E-piano, and in fact, it's way overdone compared to even an FM E-piano. August, very beautiful sound. Very digital, lots of motion in here, right? Takes a long time for that last layer to creep its way in. It does have a bit of a K5000S sound because it does have that little bit of like clipping off the highest frequencies that you get from some of that additive stuff. Dekarmic says, I'm seriously considering a Montage M6. And all the Montage M videos I've heard, the modern Yamaha sound is very subdued. So I am the first to admit that when it comes to modern workstations, I am very ignorant. I don't know much about them, so I'm very hesitant to offer an opinion there. But it sounds like the Montage M has an A1NX virtual analog engine as well, so that's pretty cool. That was a very important synth for a lot of music back in that time. So, and we finally reached our final patch. So we've been going for about an hour now. So with that in mind, you know, I think I put enough in here to justify the $10 price tag. Oh, this one's cool. You hear it more on the higher notes. Little pitch thing. Ambient machine, absolutely. I saw Gary Newman recently and was just blown away. So I've been watching George Vaughn, I think his name is, or Von George. I'm sorry if I fucked that up. Well, I know I fucked it up one of the two ways. His interviews with Aid Fenton, the producer for Gary Newman. He was talking about the M1 beauty patch quite a bit. So yeah, it's just one of those sounds. And so I put it in there. Mac, welcome. How's it going? DeCarmick says, I remember going to a show where the synth tech and a PA mixer were testing the synths before the show. What patches would you use to exercise a PA system? I would use a patch with a lot of low end because you'd want to see if you're having any problems with the low end of the system. Too much, too little, bad resonance points or something. And I'd also have a patch that has like a really harsh to the ear patch, right? You know, something that's going to really kind of have a little bit of ear cancer to it, only because that is also an important frequency for a sound engineer to sort of scoop out so that you don't do, especially at loud volumes, any damage to anybody's hearing in the crowd. Max says, do you have any Alesis synths? No, I don't. I had to go look, but no. Of course, I'd like to have an Andromeda one day. I do have a friend up the road who has an Andromeda. But the rest of them I'd love to check out, but there's just been so many vintage digital synths in my life that I just don't know that I have it within me. So why don't we open up, Nick mentioned, I think it was Nick mentioned Omnisphere. And so another way that we could interact with these sounds that isn't, and I'm going to just make sure that I've turned my volume down by about this much. We'll see if this works. So this is, I'm actually going to turn the reverb off here. We're not going to need it. Maybe we even turn the volume down a little more. Sound test with the Kate Bush fart patch. Yes. DeCarmick FM could definitely play that role. Taryn says, what are your thoughts about running VSTs like this out to the BOUM analog stereo warmer and then back into your DAW? I think if you like, I think it's a great idea to add some sort of analog component into stuff, especially if, you know, as a way to sort of give it a little bit of character. I don't know if it's necessary though. I don't own any stereo warming stuff, but I do have a lot of gear that's analog. So I don't want to be hypocritical. So we go to sample here and we could go to user audio and it's going to say drag and drop audio files here. And so what we can do is go back to our wave files and let's jump over to universe to sort of show this off. So we've got all of these different files. I'm going to use, I think the highest pitch one might give us the best results because it's going to have the most information that can get stretched down. Although we might try a lower one because it will change the timbre of what we get out of using Omnisphere here. So I'm going to just drop that user audio directly in. It's going to analyze it automatically. So if you guys can't see it there, it's now analyzed it. Let's move this so you guys can actually see what's going on in Omnisphere. Turn autoplay off and turn this off. And so now when I play, we can drop the octave here down to. So yeah, that might be a little too high. So why don't we go to back into the user audio and we'll drop a different one. We'll drop C4 maybe, might be a better. So I'm just going to drag this off the screen here and see if we get a better result. Oh, that has some really nice aliasing. So if you want that aliasing sound, C4 works great. I'm guessing C5 might be perfect though. Not too hot, not too cold. The Goldilocks frequencies here. So first thing to do is just to the amp envelope add some more release, right? Yeah, the Electron Analog Heat Mark II looked pretty amazing. I know Black Corporation came out with a pretty awesome looking one too. The same sort of idea, like analog effects. Paul says he's an Alexis QS71. Recorded a whole album with it about 20 years ago. It's nice, but not necessarily with the newer stuff that's out there now. I have to say, I'm a little bit of a synth snob when it comes to vintage digital. So for me, that ended somewhere around 95 when the Nord lead came out. In that ballpark, they started making synthesizers that were trying to do the virtual analog thing. And to my ear, very few of those synthesizers sound as good for some reason or another as the previous generation that often had lower fidelity samples, but were very tuned musically and sounded very fat and warm. So to me, that's like my personal preference is the vintage digital from like 94 and back. However, there's obviously some amazing synths that came from there, and some of my favorite bands use a lot of that stuff. Yes, Brian, I do remember that, and we're going to play around with some fun things here too. Dana, welcome to the stream. How's it going? So yeah, now we've got just one layer in here, but we can actually use this, but we can also use the synthesis inside of Omnisphere. So first off, why don't we get a juicy filter, like a 24, crank the resonance up, and go over to the filter envelope and add a little, you know, of this action here. And let's go into main and make sure I've got enough voices, so I can just increase that up to 16 if you want. Paul says an M1 61 for about 400. That's pretty good. Yeah, I can't fix my Casio CZ1. That's always one of those problems with these. So why don't we use some of the new sonic extension stuff inside of here? So first thing we can do is pull up Unclean Channel, which is really great for giving it a sort of vintage vibe. So like drifty VHS, for instance. Really great sort of sound. We could try a couple of different things, like a antique record. We could do a tape deck. Lots of noise in there. All sorts of different sounds. Some pretty crazy stuff too. Ugly digital. Let's see what this one sounds like if we want to really push the vintage digital. Really fun, but drifty VHS was cool, and I liked the little bit of hiss that it's adding. Oral Escape says, for me, it was when RAM became so cheap in the mid-90s, before the manufacturers were forced to squeeze as much as possible out of the limited resources that made the magic happen in those synths. I agree, for sure. For whatever reason, after that point, things got kind of weird. And then, if we want, we can go and open up a little bit of under echo, which is the coolest effect ever. There's so many different sounds in here. So let's just go through a couple of these, and we can hear how this is going to make it just huge. Just keep going for hours, right? Eternal feedback might really go too long. Let's go with raining echoes. so much. Let's see if we can go in here and turn the noise down a little bit, just because it's crazy. There's a lot of noise. Right, so just wild. Now, of course, what we could also do is just pick out a different sample, right? So I don't know what was a good one. Let's go with, I don't know, I want like a nice deep one. What was, I think Rinso. Why don't we go with, I guess we'll go with Top. That was everybody's favorite from the previous live stream. We'll drop a C4 in there again. So now we're going to have a completely different type of sound, but still running through this sort of, you know, really giving it a lot of extra vintage character, right? Maybe we'll turn that off for now and just hear how it sounds with the echoes. Yeah, just wild. All sorts of things we could do. Try Send to Oblivion. Yeah. So I guess that's sort of my example too of where you don't only have to use these sounds, where you're using them completely in as the sound fonts or something. You can get really creative with these. And where are these samples? Let's try one more. Let's go with Foggy, and let's go with like a lower tune sample, and they can be anything. So like in this case, I'm going to go with like D sharp 3. So that'll give us, and it gives you like a bunch of different variations that you can get off of it. Let's go with maybe just a more common delay for this. So I like the chorus echo, the emulation of the RE501. So this is how this sounds. Go up in here. Go to the amplifier and slow that down. You guys can see how easy it would be to actually turn this into a sample library for Omnisphere as well, right? It wouldn't be too difficult. Some other things that are fun are like Twisted Root. It's a really cool effect, which gives us this sort of sub-octave thing. Just really spooky sounding. Something else for making these types of sounds. Seismic Pump. If you want to get all EDM, right? So, yeah, I think that's more or less like a decent overview. Do you guys have any questions for me about Revenant M1 before we close out the stream? Because I think I've kind of shown like a few different ways to do it. I still want to try a couple of different patches and, you know, be a little creative with it. See if there's anything else that's kind of cool. Here we go. Let's turn that off. That's ridiculous. That's a terrible, you know, it's perfect for somebody, but not really for me. Let's go with under echo again. A great example of how, like I said earlier, you don't need to actually use every sample, right? This is just one sample stretched across the keyboard, and it actually still sounds really good. It's actually a very cool sort of X-Files-y type sound. Favorite beard oil? I actually just order, people have a tendency to give me beard oil as gifts, which is great because, you know, I know it's not too expensive and I'm very hard to buy gifts for. I'm very self-sufficient. So unless it's a very expensive vintage synthesizer, I kind of don't want it. I'm like very minimalist. However, people just tend to buy me beard oil. So I guess whatever smells good. But if I ever run out, what I get is just argan oil, because that's kind of the shit, and you can usually get it for cheap off Amazon, relatively speaking, per ounce, and it's probably a better value than a lot of the beard oils, which are more like hype and stuff like that. Yeah, this would go great with the JD08. Doesn't that just sound great? So yeah, I think with that, I think I'm good to say we'll call it a night checking out Revenant M1. Hopefully that was a pretty good introduction to everything you get with it and different ways you could use it. Really just scratching the surface of using the individual samples. But again, I really provided those more so you guys could load them. Waves are truly universal. So if you don't have a sampler that uses sound fonts, then you could load just the waves in, and they're all labeled, so a lot of samplers will automatically detect if it says like C#6, it'll know what that means, right? Ambient, you're very welcome. Jamar, welcome. How's it going, my man? Welcome to the stream, Jamar. Yeah, just a lot of fun making this, and hopefully it's a value to someone somewhere. I think it's a lot of fun. Again, members of the channel get it for free right now, as well as Diodes and Rust, my vintage industrial drum pack, Inktomi, my vintage chorus and reverb plugin. Get all that shit for $5 a month. It helps keep the channel going, helps keep the lights on in here. I've got to take off work to be able to do this, so helps me be able to do that. And again, I try to keep the prices as reasonable as possible. So yeah, it was a lot of fun to just make some music and hang out with you guys. Next week, if everything goes well, we'll be checking out the Ensoniq TS10. Finally. It's been such a journey with that synth, getting it repaired and everything, but she's good to go. Very excited about that. I need to make sure I have all the factory sounds initialized and all of that before the stream, but looking forward to that. Lunaris 2 by Luftrum, we're going to be checking that out soon, and then we're going to be doing some more Versus streams. So I've got, finally behind me, I've got the Moog next to the SH2, and that's actually going to be a lot of a fun stream to do. I used to have the Moog on the other side of the room, so it occurred to me that those two synths are very similar, and probably I want to know for myself if there's anything that the Source does that I feel is missing on the SH2, because I just love the SH2 so much and sort of feel like it's really just an incredible synthesizer. I also want to check out the DW8000 versus the SQ80 soon, because the DW8000 has just crushed its competition. Every time we've done a Versus stream with the DW8000, everybody votes for the DW8000. I love the Quad K3, and I'll always keep it just because of the synthesis, and it does have a certain kind of sound to it, but the DW8000 just sounded so wonderful. Regal, how's it going, my friend? I'm glad they will be, Paul. Absolutely. I can't wait to check it out. I haven't even checked out Lunaris 2, just because I don't have time with everything I'm doing to be able to actually sit down and just try everything. So luckily I've got the live stream to be able to do that. Awesome. I'm looking forward to it, Hypothesis. Let me know what you think in the comments for sure. Thank you very much, Vince. I really appreciate it. It's people like you who make it possible for me to do what I'm doing. So thank you very, very much. So anyways, I think with that, I'm going to wish you guys all the absolute best week. Continue to be excellent, and I will see you in the next video.